Hello everyone, thank you for joining today's webinar that we host live from Berlin, Germany, entitled The Customer Journey, How Hotel Guests Make Digital Purchasing Decisions. Yeah, my name is Philip, so I'm not on the slide, as you can see. I'm the head of marketing here at SuitePad, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webinar. First of all, please let me introduce you to our speakers for today. You see on the left, Valerie Wagner. Valerie supports hotels with digitalization. She is a qualified hotel manager, certified company organizer, and a certified revenue and e-commerce manager, and has already successfully managed hotels. And as an industry insider, she regularly shares her knowledge on her German blog and podcast on Hotel-O-Motion. The gentleman on the right, that's Moritz von Petersdorff-Campen, co-founder and CEO of SuitePad. Before founding the company, Moritz studied at the prestigious WHU Otto Beisheim School of Management here in Germany, and then headed up a cloud computing startup before 2012 founding SuitePad together with Tilman Volk in Berlin. Cool, before we start, I've just got a few organizational notes. Our webinar will take about 45 minutes in total. And we planned 30 to 35 minutes for the presentation and then 10 to 15 minutes for question and answers Q&A session. So please feel free to post your questions at any time during the webinar and of course also during the Q&A. And to do this, just use the question chat window in your GoToWebinar control panel on the top right corner of your screen. And at the end, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, of course. We'll also be recording the webinar, and each one of you will receive a copy some days after the webinar. Yeah, that's it from my side. I'll be back later to chair the Q&A session. But without further delay, I'll pass the screen over to you, Valerie, and yeah, enjoy the webinar, everyone.
Yes, thank you, Philip, for the introduction. I would also like to welcome you to our webinar about the customer journey, and I'm looking forward to tell you something about it. Classically, the customer journey consists of 3 phases: the pre-stay phase, so the phase before arrival, the during stay phase, and therefore Moritz will tell you something about, and the post-stay phase. Guest expectation is the first point I want to talk about, and I want to start with the question: do you know your target group, and do you know what your guests want? On my podcast, I talk to different people who are sometimes more, sometimes less regular guests in a hotel, and I have received some statements on guest expectations from them. For example, we have: I prefer to book directly on the website of a hotel. I find this point very interesting because direct booking is very popular. Unfortunately, I didn't find a statistic for Europe to support this, but on the German version of this webinar, there was a statistic for Germany that 90% of online bookers like to book directly. So then someone says, before booking, I read reviews, especially the critical ones, and then make my decision. Ratings are important, and I highly recommend this to you. Deal with ratings correctly, respond to each comment, and that is basically the challenge: individually, authentically, and without copy-paste and standards. Your guests are on social media. This is the next one. Of course, before booking, I also check if the hotel is on Instagram as an account or hashtag to see what others are posting about the hotel. So your guests are on social media, and that's why you should be there as well. It is important to me to note in advance that it is not enough to have an account and post something from time to time, or maybe to do native advertising and only post offers. Social media is more about social. That's why it's also before the word media. And it's about community management. And also some of them say, I can pay directly on the online store with one-click PayPal. Why not in hotels? So digital payment is a big topic, and PSD2 should make this easier, faster, and cheaper. Data leaks with credit cards, such as Marriott or Choice Hotels, unfortunately don't make it easier for hotels to win the trust of their customers. And also, some of them say, if digital tools give me an added value, I'll use them. I also brought some data and facts. On the Google blog, there was a report with a study that found out that travelers have up to 700 touch points before they actually book a trip. Also, 53% of business travelers and 31% of private travelers have already booked on their smartphone. That means for you, check if your website is mobile friendly. Your webmaster should be able to tell you that, or you visit your website via your smartphone. And a tip on the site, no pop-ups, and on the mobile version or overlays. These overlays usually cover everything else on the page, and a smartphone is a maximum of 7.3 inches space to show your website. So if the mobile version of your website doesn't convert, this may be because of the overlays. Now we come to the keyword influencer marketing. 75% of business travelers rely on their own experience, 70% on the recommendation of colleagues. So we are all influencers. 51% on map services and 5% on online reviews. The customer journey begins long before the arrival. As you have seen, a potential guest has up to 700 touch points before clicking the buy button. So my question for you, where can your guests find your hotel on the net? And I also present the competitors to you. On the left, you can see the booking portals and rating platforms. On the right, you see the search engine Google with the largest market share, but also different social networks. Facebook and Instagram are, of course, well known, but Twitter could also be interesting. Recently, a colleague of mine, a little story beside, recently a colleague of mine who I follow on Twitter asked her followers the question, let's assume I'm looking for a hotel in Munich. Which one would you recommend to me? And there were about 15 answers, and only 2 of the mentioned hotels had a Twitter account. The other 13 were no chains, but individual hotels and privately run. So people talk and recommend on social media, but above all, they ask their community. 86% of travelers start their search on the net, preferably via Google. In addition to Google, there are other search engines such as Bing or Ecosia. Bing is the search engine of Microsoft, and Ecosia is committed to sustainability and plants a tree for each search. Swiss Cows and Mouse are local search engines. Swiss Cows is the search engine in Switzerland and Mouse in Austria. DuckDuckGo promises that the search will not be tracked and the data will not be sold. It blocks web trackers and it is committed to data economy. This is the percentage of people in selected European countries who have booked travel and holidays accommodation on the internet in 2018. So place 1 to 3 is Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, and then the others come along as well. So it will grow. And 90% say that they book the accommodations on their own platform of the hotel. And that's good news. And one more reason why you are now intensively involved with the customer journey. So the customer journey starts on the internet. Now we go to the stay phase. You finally brought your guest to book your hotel. Oh no, sorry, the pre-stay phase. Sorry. So when the customer journey starts on the net, how exactly does it start? At first, the guest looks for inspiration, perhaps on the sofa in the evening. He or she may have heard something from friends, received a recommendation, received a postcard, or is planning his or her next holiday. By the way, business trips also take place in a similar form. The event planner receives the order to organize a conference and also searches the net. Then naturally completely different information must be made available than with a vacation journey, but also the business traveler or the booker goes through the customer journey. And I would like to remind you here for the guest expectations, which are different in every target group, or better, in every demand group. So they find inspiration also on social media. Some hotels are, on the left side, you see now the screenshot from Instagram, and on the right, the screenshot from LinkedIn. Some hotels are already presented on Instagram, but it is still noticeable that software providers with the word hotel in the name dominate. If you decide to become active on social media, then it is not enough to have an account there and post something every now and then. On social media, you should take care of the community and be very active. And on a daily basis to become visible and maintain reach. Especially on Instagram, it is very important to interact with the followers. That means posting daily, answering comments, creating stories. That's not for by the way, but if you want to do it right, a full-time job. I find LinkedIn especially interesting for conference hotels. LinkedIn is also called the business Facebook. By the way, LinkedIn has been part of Microsoft since December 2016. This is also interesting for those of you who deal with search engine optimization, because so-called social signals also pay for your visibility and reach on the net and the social networks. LinkedIn is basically a platform on which you can develop your personal brand and establish yourself as an expert. This in turn pays off for your company, because people buy from people and rarely from algorithms. You should not underestimate the picture search. The web is becoming increasingly visual, as you can see from the success of new networks like TikTok or Pinterest. In short, Pinterest is less a social network than an image search engine. It's particularly well known among food bloggers, travel bloggers, and do-it-yourself bloggers. But that's exactly why I think it's very interesting for the hotel industry. The good thing about it is that pins live many times longer than a tweet on Twitter or a Facebook post, namely up to 4 months. That means a receipt pin for your restaurant or a furnishing tip from your hotel room will still bring traffic to your website 4 months after publication. Another advantage of Pinterest, you don't have to maintain a community. Also, Pinterest also likes fresh content and plays it out better. So the next step will be the stay phase, and it begins with the arrival. So in times of connected cars and voice search, you should also place your hotel at these touch points. The map service here was sold 2015-2016 by Nokia to Audi, Daimler, and BMW. This cost the companies around 3 billion euros. In January 2019, Amazon entered into a partnership with HERE. Voice search is becoming increasingly important, and experts claim that voice search will account for 50% of search queries in 2020, and this is next year. These include the assistant Alexa, Siri, and Google. Amazon Alexa finds search queries via Yelp, Microsoft Cortana via Bing, Google Assistant via Google, and Siri also via Google, and Apple switched from Bing to Google in 2017 for Siri. And thanks for listening so far, and I'm handing over to Moritz for the during stay phase.
Great. Thank you very much, Valerie. Thanks a lot, Philip, for the introduction. Super excited to give every one of you some more insights into the during stay phase and how digital purchasing decisions or purchasing decisions in general can be used for the hotel industry overall. Now, there we go. Now my slides work. Before we talk about what exactly hotels can do in order to trigger digital purchasing decisions, I'd like to go on a very, very quick detour and talk real quick about what are purchasing decisions actually, and what are they made of, and how can we separate them into different groups. Now, I strongly believe that there are some purchasing decisions that are super, super, super emotional, while others are more cognitive. So basically, if we're talking about a cognitive decision, where we really thought a lot about the purchase we want to do, and at the same time, we also had a very high emotional involvement, we usually talk about an extensive purchase. For instance, if you think about booking your next holiday, this is typically a very extensive purchase because obviously holidays are an emotional product, but at the same time, you are going to be comparing different hotels, you're going to look at different ratings on TripAdvisor and things like that. So it's emotional and cognitive. But there are also some decisions that are mainly cognitive. And I hope those of you who are running business hotels that are listening right now don't mind if I say that a business hotel is more of a cognitive decision because it's close to where your meetings might be, or it's the same location where the conference is. That being said, I still strongly believe that those business hotels that are able to emotionalize their brand are usually more successful than those who don't. But in comparison, especially for a hotel that you book for your holidays, I think it's clear and we can agree on that booking a hotel for business is more of a cognitive purchase. Now, we humans aren't always super, super rational beings. So there are some decisions that are not really triggered through our brains, but more through the emotions that we have. And obviously there are decisions that are super, super emotional. Very often those decisions are impulse purchases. So really where we strongly feel that this is the right thing to do right now, despite the fact that it might not be, from a rational point of view, the right thing to do. For instance, take spa treatments. Don't get me wrong, some of them have a very medical implication, and it's good also for you to do it and to relax and to calm down. But in different scenarios, it might even be better for the person to just, I don't know, get on their jogging shoes and start running for 30 minutes or an hour, which might even do better for their health than some of the spa treatments, at least, that are out there. Well, there are medicals, there are also some that are focused on other things. So those decisions are very often more emotional because you feel like it would be the right thing for you now. And there are decisions that are not very emotional at all and also not very cognitive. Those decisions are routine purchases. So if you are walking down the street and you feel that you are a little bit hungry and you ask yourself, where can I get some food tonight? Because it's a routine that you have, that you're having dinner. In that scenario, a dinner would be a routine purchase. That being said, obviously, if you go to a Michelin star restaurant, this is going to be a highly emotional decision and highly cognitive. But as said, there are also those kind of dinners that are more routine than pleasure. And in that case, we'd be talking about a routine purchase. Now, why is this important, especially if we look at digital purchasing decisions in the hotel context? I think the main reason is that most of the things that are less, or most of the decisions that a guest is taking during the stay are less cognitive than pre-stay. So when the guest comes into your property, many of them leave their brain at home or switch it off before they come inside. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I think it's a very, very positive thing, especially if you're running a holiday hotel. I think this is something that many of the customers want to achieve. And if you run a business hotel, I think you also should try to aim for this, because it makes it much easier for the guest to find his way around in the property if they don't have to overthink everything. And at the same time, I also strongly believe that the fact that the decisions that the guest is taking there are less cognitive has some super, super strong and positive implications for the hotel industry. For instance, there's going to be less price comparison. the guest is probably not going to check out the room service card of another property while he's in your hotel room. Also, he's not going to compare different prices to each other in that way that he's doing it before the stay, which usually leads to higher margins. Also in combination with the fact that most of the time, it's changing a little bit, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but most of the time there are no commissions involved when the guest is, for instance, booking the restaurant in the property he's staying at. So the combination of less price comparison and no OTAs in between for those services usually lead to higher margins for the customer. Now, as said, this is changing quite a bit right now. So while pre-stay communication has been digitized tremendously over the last couple of years, and post-stay, when we think about feedback, also became more and more digital through companies like TripAdvisor or Holiday Check, the during stay experience is digitizing as well. And this is only to an extent good news for hotels, because it means that companies like TripAdvisor or OpenTable, that a couple of years got bought by Booking.com, try to get into your guest's head while they are sitting in your property and thinking about what am I gonna eat tonight and where I'm gonna have a good time over the next couple of days. So basically they try to reach the guest during the stay and take the guest from your property into another restaurant that might have a TripAdvisor rating that is just a little bit better than the one that you have. So this price comparison mechanisms and those commission mechanisms and those companies try to come into the during stay phase and basically try to take away the guests from you and bring them into other outlets. Now, the question is basically, how can we keep the guest and his money in the property despite the fact that there are digital competitors out there? And I think the answer to this, and that what I want to talk about briefly in a minute, is really to provide your own digital channels in order to trigger digital purchasing decisions. And how this can look, we're going to look at in a minute. Just one thing before we look at that, and before we look at the different solutions that you can use in order to achieve that, is really one thing that you need to consider for every solution that is out there, is that one thing you need in order to get the guest to buy services is his involvement. It could be a rational decision, it could be emotional, but he needs to be involved, whether he's rationally involved or emotionally involved, but involvement is the core to this. So basically the question is, if there are different solutions out there in order to trigger those purchasing decisions for the guest, which are the ones that have the highest guest involvement? And in order to take a closer look at that, we decided that obviously if you want to have high involvement, you need to have a high number of guests using those solutions, and you need an easy to use interface, because otherwise, even if many guests are using it, but they don't understand how to use it, then the involvement can't be very high. So what we're doing here, SuitePad as a provider, we have solutions for the TV, we have solutions for the guest own device, and we have the in-room tablet that is replacing the paper collateral. Have those three different solutions. So I don't want to talk good or bad about different solutions here. It's basically just giving you the numbers that we perceive from our existing client base. Now, how many guests are actually using the TV? Quite a decent number. So whenever they turn on the TV, you can put on a smart TV all the different pieces of hotel information. The issue usually with smart TVs is that the user interface is not very easy to use. So if you ever try to order room service through a remote control, you know exactly what I mean. If you talk about a hotel app, it's super easy to use because the guest knows his own device and knows how to use it. The issue is usually, though, that only somewhere between 2 to 10% of guests will end up downloading a hotel app, which basically means that of those who download it, the involvement is very high, but the overall involvement is very low because few guests use it. And the last product, the in-room tablet, which is, of course, because you need to buy hardware for all of the rooms, also usually one that is a bit costly, is, on the other hand, the one where we see the strongest usage statistics. So usually somewhere between 60 to 90% of customers start to interact with that device. And as it has a touchscreen, it is as easy to use as the app. So basically, from our own data, from the different solutions that we provide, we see that the guest involvement on the in-room tablet is the highest. And this is how it can look like, for instance, for the Me by Melia in London. Now, what I want to do is I wanted to talk about what we see in terms of purchasing decisions on those devices, because this is, as explained before, where we see the strongest data points in terms of guest involvement. And in order to talk about that, I again separated it into the kind of different purchasing decisions we're talking about. So first off, we're going to talk about the routine purchase. The good thing with a routine purchase is that usually there's always a specific need present. What does that mean? That means that the guest is already hungry, or he knows he's going to be hungry in a couple of hours. So you're not going to sell anything more in your room service because of an in-room tablet. You're going to sell your room service because the guest is hungry. But what you need to do with digital solutions is basically channel the guest towards your service instead of having the guest use TripAdvisor or Holiday Check or whatever kind of platform in order to get other information from other outlets around the property, so that he might end up in a competitor's outlet. Now, how can you do that? I think one of the very, very important things here is that you are super transparent in terms of pricing. What does that mean? Many guests still perceive hotel restaurants as very expensive, and often the food they say is not that good. I don't think that this is always true, but if you are transparent about what you're offering, what your specialities are, so that basically you can put all that pieces of information on an in-room tablet here, that really helps the guest a lot in order to determine if this would be a good fit for his dinner decision tonight. Also, entry-level deals or daily menus, weekly menus, or lunch menus, those kind of things really, really help to convince the guest that he's going to give your restaurant a try. Obviously, with digital solutions, be it on the TV or smartphone or tablet, you can change that kind of content on a daily or on a weekly basis. So you don't have to print that kind of information and bring it into the room for the guest. So this really helps a lot in order to convince the guest that he should spend more time in your outlets. And then, most importantly, make it super easy for the guest to buy. Think about guests that don't speak the local language or English very well. Many Asian guests, for instance, that come to Europe are a bit shy to speak English on the phone when ordering room service because they might not be as trained in it as your staff is. So if they can see the picture, the price and the description of the product that they are about to buy and put it into their shopping basket, this is especially for international guests driving up even room service orders quite dramatically. So those are the things that you can do to trigger routine purchases. It's not about creating the awareness for something that they actually need but they didn't know before, but it's more about channeling the guest to your products, to your outlets, and making sure that he's going to buy with you and not with a competitor. How about impulse purchases? How can we get the guests who didn't actually know that he needs a product to buy a product that he didn't need a couple of minutes ago? So how can we get that done? Because this is obviously most of the time also exactly the kind of purchase that a hotel would like the guest to do. And I think you can only achieve this if there's an underlying interest in the product that you're offering already, and basically send the right message to the right guest at the right time. This is usually leading to a purchase. So how can we do that? What we did for one of our customers is basically analyzing their traffic on the tablets on everything related to their spa. So at what time of day is the guest checking out the spa information on the tablet? So on this chart here, you can see the different hours of day from 0 to 23 and can see when the guest is actually interacting with the spa related content. Now, here you can see that you have those different spikes, but you can also see that at 3 in the morning, the guest's not very interested in your spa area. So basically, what can you do with that kind of information? You can combine it with push messages. So what we did for that customer is we said, well, it probably makes sense to send the guest, if you want to promote your spa, a push message in the morning and say, hey, we still have treatments available for today. So we tried to grab this morning traffic and convert it into bookings for the same day. And as for this property, the spa was really what they wanted to push. They said the second thing we're going to do is we're going to take the late afternoon and evening traffic and try to convert it into bookings for the next day. How can that look? Basically, it looks like a pop-up message that you see on the right-hand side here. So if you click on continue, you can even see the treatments or the available times. And this is something that really, really works well if done in a nice way So in this case, for the Falkensteiner Hotel in Stegersbach in Austria, we saw that they sold roughly 250 additional treatments on a yearly basis, which resulted into 20,000 euros additional revenue in the spa area, because they were sending the right message to the right guest at the right point in time, which is super, super important if you want to trigger impulse purchases. Another way to trigger impulse purchases is to remind the guest of things and services he is usually not completely aware of that the hotel is offering it. To give you an example from Italy, we have customers in wine regions that let the guest purchase the wine from the region directly on the tablet. So they don't have to go to the different wineries, which is a great thing also, but if they weren't able to go to all of them, then they can basically purchase that from the hotel and they're going to put it right into their trunk. Now, this is a great service that you can provide the customer with. And if you promote it here, you can basically see that some of those hotels have 5 figures digits in terms of revenues on a yearly basis when it comes to wine sales, which is a whole new business for that hotel now. But same holds true also for other things like a hotel shop with different things that you might be offering there. Or when it comes to gift cards, it really, really works well to work with certain trigger events. So for instance, if we are in January or February and we're heading towards Valentine's Day or we're heading towards Mother's Day, then you can then again send push messages to your customers and ask if they already have a present for their loved ones. And if not, they can buy it right away from their SuitePad. So also those kind of initiatives can work really well if you have additional services that you provide the guest with, or if you know that a certain event is coming up that the guest has to have in mind for their private life as well. So basically by creating this awareness for products that the guest wasn't aware that you are selling, this is usually the best way forward in order to trigger impulse purchases. And last but not least, I don't think that a purchase always has to be something that the guest does on the property, in the property, and consumes in the property. One thing that especially our customers from the chain level do really, really, really well is they integrate their newsletters and their reward programs into the SuitePad. So you can basically just sign up for the reward program right on the SuitePad and maybe even consume a small benefit like a free drink at the bar as a benefit because you did that. So this is how you can connect the during stay experience with the after stay or post stay experience that Valerie is going to give us more insights on in a minute.
Yeah, the post-stay phase is the next, and most of the time it's quite short in most hotels, unfortunately, because with its great potential, simply walks out the door. Well, you have managed, as Moritz has described, to inspire your guests, have generated additional revenue, and simply let a satisfied guest leave with the invoice. Then it is a great pity and above all wasted revenue. It is more expensive to win a new customer than to bring a guest to rebooking. The post-stay phase does not end with the departure and hand over the invoice. Now it is your chance to make this guest a regular guest, an ambassador, an influencer for your hotel. Reviews are very often underestimated. At the beginning, I showed you that only 5% of online bookers value ratings according to study. Nevertheless, I strongly advise you not to do without ratings, but to request them proactively. This also increases visibility on the internet. There are different providers who use aggregators to cumulate the ratings of your hotel and display them on your website, for example. And your website should also be the page on which your guests receive all information about your hotel. Another important point is how to deal with ratings on TripAdvisor or Holiday Check. You should or you must answer each rating individually. This shows other interest parties that you take feedback seriously. Don't forget Google My Business. Reviews can also be given there. These also appear in the search results, and ratings are also possible on your Facebook fan page. And one more thing, ratings in a guest book with a gold edge are beautiful and nostalgic and have their permission. but they don't help you with the digital customer journey. The guest who reads in this book is already in your house, but you need ratings for your reputation, for your online reputation, and they are reflected on the internet and on social media. Also think about user-generated content, for example, with influencer marketing. Ratings are nothing else, only without control. Influencers are not always the ones who post beautiful images on Instagram and look like top models all day long, or even take advantage of free nights. Influencers are your guests, your employees, your suppliers, and everyone you deal with on a daily basis in your business environment. They talk everywhere about influencer marketing or user-generated content, and you can better control it when you know where and how your company is being talked about. Another option would be blogger relation. Both should be long-term and starts with relationship building. And yeah, I recommend to use this marketing discipline for your hotel. The customer journey is a fragile construct that you have to think about from start to finish. So I have a few questions at the end. How should you perceive your guests? How do you want to be perceived? What message do you have? Who is your target group? And what is your holistic goal? In summary, pay attention to your customer journey that builds on each other. Know the touch points of your guests. Stay where your guests are. Provide added value and relevant information. Accompany your guests to your hotel again and again. Create unique experiences and move with the times. In my opinion, digital guest communication is the key to success. Digitalization is the new guest relation, and I find with this webinar you have received some impulses that you should at least consider. Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Valerie and Moritz, for the presentations. So now it's time for your questions. Please use the chat function or the question function on your control panel. We already received some questions, so I'll jump right into it. First one to Valerie. How much time do I need to spend on a daily basis for social media and managing my reviews?
Well, that depends on how many ratings you get on social media. You should check daily and preferably several times whether there are ratings or comments or likes on your social media accounts. For ratings, there are tools you can use to central it on your desktop, and of course, you have to do a research, who served this guest, what exactly happened, and this needs time. So you may need 1 or 2 hours per day. Then also, of course, you have to think about your time management, and you should block at least 1 hour in your calendar daily for reviews and social media comments and so on.
Okay, thank you. Next one to Moritz, a bit longer. My guests even steal batteries from remote controls. How do you make sure a SuitePad stays in the room?
That's a very good question. And to be honest, when we started the company 7 years ago, that was our biggest worry, because if we would have run into big issues there, then we wouldn't have survived, basically. Fortunately, we have never had a big theft issue. So overall, the theft rate on a yearly basis is below 2%. And the reason I think is basically that you can't use the device for anything else but for the purpose in the hotel. So the guest can also see that right away when he holds it in his hand. He can't get out of the kiosk mode. He can't do anything with the device apart from consuming the hotel content or controlling the TV in the room or doing calls within the hotel Wi-Fi. And that's also something that we communicate quite clearly on the device. In order to take away the worries of the hotels, we've also insured all of those devices ourselves. So basically, if a device gets stolen in the first year, the hotel gets a free replacement from us. So basically, we still have to worry about theft, and of course, everybody wants to make sure that it doesn't happen. But yeah, for the hotel, it shouldn't be a worry at all because we're covering all the costs that might come along with a stolen device.
Okay, thank you. Next one to Valerie again. How do I get on Google's #1 page? It's not that easy.
Yeah, that's true. Well, search engine AdWords or ads is a quick way to become more visible. This applies to all types of ads. With the right targeting, you can place advertisements. With it, you can reach many people in a short time. This is now and then correct and important, but rather follows. Yeah, but it's not. It's like giving, yeah, like advertisement on television. You don't know who's watching and if this person belongs to your target group. So if you want to address your target group correctly, then you have a look in your Google Analytics or in your Search Console with which search terms your website is ranked. Then content marketing in combination with social media and influencer marketing could also be something for you. That doesn't mean you have to have your own blog. Also, I'd like to recommend this, but you should satisfy the informational search of your potential guests and set the content they are looking for. Especially with regard to voice search, you remember that it will be affect up to 50% of search queries in 2020. Editorial texts are very important. So if you are a meeting hotel, you can write about how you organize meetings and give tips and yeah, relevant information to your guest.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a never-ending story, and constant efforts are very important here, and for every company out there. Last one right now goes to Moritz. Smartphone versus tablet. What's your take on this for the future digital guest communication?
Yeah, that is a big question. Basically, nobody can really tell what's going to happen tomorrow. I think the speed of innovation has always been increasing. So the likelihood that there's something new going to come around the corner and change the whole industry is always there, which makes this job and this opportunity basically also super exciting. From my perspective, as a company that provides tablets, but also solutions for the guest own device or solutions for the TV or for the lobby area, it's more about what is the guest actually using and what is he spending his time on. So what we see right now is that if we compare our bring your own device solution to our tablets, we see roughly 20 times more traffic on those tablets. And I think the main reason is that it's just sitting there in the room, the guest can pick it up, especially if you combine it with, for instance, room control or TV control. In that case, the guest always has another good reason to pick up the device and start interacting with that. And I do feel that there's always going to be hardware in the room, because I do feel that you're not going to have the guest to download an app in order to be able to turn on the TV or to change the AC, or to basically be able to get information on when breakfast is. I think those needs will always have to be satisfied by a solution that the hotel is providing. And as we try to unify the remote control, the telephone, the guest directory, and many other things like the alarm clock on a single device, this is really where I strongly feel that also in the future there's going to be a piece of hardware in the room. Can it be a super tech-savvy TV at some point in time? Maybe yes, but I strongly feel that in the room there's always going to be room for hardware. That being said, as we also provide solutions for the guest own device. I strongly believe that the smartphone that is really ingrained into our daily life is something that will be used more and more also in the hotel industry. Few hotels have started with opening the doors through the phones. I think things like Apple Pay and Google Pay will help a lot with checkout through the phones. I do think that in the pre-stay communication, many hotels can do a much better job in promoting their services and offers while the guest is still on the way to the property, in order to upsell them to a different category and things like that. So I don't think it's going to be an either tablet or smartphone or TV or this or that. I think it's always the question is always going to be, what is the guest using? What does the guest wants? And he probably is going to interact with various different solutions in order to fulfill his needs. And if we look at the data right now, we see the strongest usage statistics by far still on the tablet. That might change over the next years to come. But I think a decision like this in such a fast-paced environment is always a decision for the next 2 to 3, maybe 4 years. And at least I don't see any big changes coming in tomorrow. But who knows what's going to be around the corner.
Yeah, exciting times ahead. So thank you very much, Moritz and Valerie, for the presentation and answering our questions from the audience. Thank you very much for listening. Please fill out the quick survey that pops up immediately after the webinar ends. So thank you very much for joining. Have a great day ahead, and see you next time. Bye-bye.